Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. This is our Mid-South Wrestling television review, and we will be talking about Mid-South Wrestling episode 262. Am I correct, Rodney?
That would be 262. Exactly right. It was originally broadcast on September the 13th
Hey, my birthday.
of 1984. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, before we get started, Pro Wrestling Inside and Out T-shirt, Pro Wrestling Inside Out T-shirt. A little bit of a plug there for everybody that might want to go purchase one. Just got them in, fresh off the press right now.
Shameless plug right off the beginning.
Yeah, right off
That's
the
it.
And that's the way we get here, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to say hello to Retro Rob. He has joined us for this evening's festivities. And I have a feeling this is going to be banner. I'm going to tell you right now. This is going to be one of these that I believe will set the internet on fire on this one.
We may all turn heel before this one's over.
Now, I have a lot of notes.
Well, that's about right. That's about right. Well, let's start off this program. Oh, by the way, Jack Lord, Brent West, I'm Rodney West. And I say, let the knocking begin. We begin the show with Boyd Pierce and Cowboy Bill Watson. Of course, Boyd had been gone for a couple of weeks because of his mother passing away. And, of course, Boyd in a classy way thanks the fans for all their support. Fantastic as normal. Then we start with Bill Watts, story time again, with him talking about the signing that we had last week. One of the most brilliant things, I believe, ever on Mid-South Wrestling and wrestling in general, between the Fantastics and Jim Cornette and Midnight Express. Just absolutely fantastic. He explains that he'd been to Tampa. I'm not sure how Mid-South is in Tampa, but anyway, they've got their offices in Tampa, Florida. They flew down there and they have everything on hold now. They want to put together the biggest find that's ever been put on. Of course, Cornette has weaseled his way through and says that he has looked at the rules and that Mid-South's the one that brought the chair in, and that Mid-South it was in a regulation match and that they deserved a hearing. So the lawyers got involved. We hear from Cornette. He explains all of this. Of course, they re-show everything from the previous week. We come back, and Bill Watts is again decided to take time out of this very busy broadcast time for another trip down Junkyard Dog Lane. This time around, he is, you know, Bill, he left you. Get over it. Okay. Anyway.
No, you would think he was jilted by his wife.
It sounds like.
Exactly.
So now.
That came later.
Yeah, absolutely true. Anyway, so now we're going to go back and we're going to show a video of Butch Reed and all the things that he did to the Junkyard Dog. Now, Brent, could you give me your impression of this video and why it's being shown at this time?
All right. Now, was this an old video had been shown on the show before?
Yes. Him working out and, yeah.
And I understand. I think I understand why he did it, because the next segment we got Butch Reed waiting. Was he waiting for somebody to come out and wrestle?
He was wrestling he was going to wait on Brickhouse Brown.
Yep.
Brickhouse Brown.
All right, he's waiting on Brickhouse Brown. Okay, so I guess they were trying to show this to build heat on Butch Reed, right? Because he's tarred and feathered the Junkyard Dog, which would make me want to go see the Junkyard Dog in Butch Reed. He's painted him yellow. And by the way, when he did paint him yellow, if you'll notice, Butch Reed fell on his own paint.
Yes, everybody did. Dennis Condrey did. Everybody did. Yes.
You know, so at least they took a bump on their own little gimmick, and they did a couple other things. I think the Junkyard Dog, but it was all about Junkyard Dog, and I'm thinking, why did they go that route?
Yeah, Jack. What would you you watched this? What would you think that they would reshow all of that?
If I were a fan, I would be thinking they were building for Junkyard Dog to come back.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what I'm thinking. But anyway, so now they return, and now it's going to be the big match. It's going to be Hacksaw Butch Reed against Brickhouse Brown. Of course, they've been building for weeks. getting this thing ready. Then, as we're sitting there waiting for Brickhouse Brown to come down the ring, Reed is screaming, "Where's the Outhouse Brown? Why doesn't he come down? Hurry up, come on down here. Get him down here, referee." And then all of a sudden, a nameless man, mysterious man, comes into the barricades, up the steps, and into the ring. Bill Watts says, "I do not know who this man is." My question is, how stupid does he really think the wrestling fans are?
Well, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you that. Am I wrong? But didn't George Wells wrestle in Mid-South Wrestling prior to this?
You know what? I think he did. I think he was there before.
Well, I looked it up on Wikipedia today, and it didn't have any reference to Mid-South before then. It's still possible that he could have, but
well, evidently,
Wikipedia now.
Evidently, Bill Watts did not watch Georgia Championship Wrestling because he was on there.
Well, I mean, it was quite amazing that now a fan or a person off the street can just walk into a Mid-South ring at any time and proceed to beat somebody to a pulp.
But I have to agree now. George Wells beating him to the pulp was pretty good stuff, though.
Yeah.
It looked good. Everything he did looked spectacular. Didn't y'all think so?
And it was unpredictable, and I give him that. You never can predict what happens on this show, and I give 100% of this. But to act like I don't know who this guy is, for the referee to say, "Why don't you get security?" Normally, if a fan would have jumped in the ring, Bill Watts would have been the first one to take the headsets off and beat the crap out of him.
But wasn't Ronnie West the referee in this match?
He was, and you would think he would have got him first because Dad he enjoyed beating somebody up as they come.
I'll be honest with you though, I never realized how big George Wells was.
He's a big boy.
He was a big old dude, wasn't he? So I don't even know if Dad would have done that. He would have said, "I guess it's on your own, Reed. There you go."
He's another former football player. Played for the 49ers and for Canada.
Wow. I didn't realize. I didn't realize he was so big when I watched the video back. I said, "Man, this guy's huge," and his punches look good. Everything he did will look. I don't remember it looking that good. I was just remembering not liking George Wells. So I don't know. Maybe you're seeing through different eyes now. Maybe old man eyes now. Let's see.
Maybe you're comparing it to current product. Anyway, first of all, I'd like to say hello to Jason Kitchens. He's always great to have you on, Jason. He's looking forward to looking back at Mid-South. Then we got Dennis Cook. He is saying good evening from Mobile, Alabama. Rhett Harrison, Mississippi Gulf Coast here, and saying hello to everybody. Mike Schaefer watching in Bama. And James Brown. I'm on my kayfabe.
We are too, James. We're all on our kayfabe names.
Outstanding. Anyway,
we don't even have our names up there. What happened to our names?
Well, you're Bad Street. I'm Mid-South, so
I'm pro wrestling inside and out. T-shirt now on sale at facebook.com. Hit shop now, and you can get to that.
Well, anyway, as we said, a total shellacking. I listened to the crowd. They almost at a point started booing Mr. George Wells. I'm just going to tell you that you can start hearing the boos because as he started to just pummel him right there in front of all to see. Anyway, we come back with Jim Ross. He's got an interview as he introduces himself as Master G. George Wells is now Master G. Now he talks about talking with the Junkyard Dog, and he was at Madison Square Garden where he turned down $5,000 payoff to be there.
Is that what he said in that? No, I'm sorry, I didn't listen to that interview.
Yep.
He turned down a $5,000 payoff.
And he said payoff in this interview?
Yeah, sure. And to get a $75 one to come to TV.
I'm sorry, I didn't listen to the interview.
Well, I can tell you right now, it was Jack. What did you think of the interview?
I almost took a nap.
I'm going to tell you right now. Let me tell you what I believe in this. I believe we needed a Dusty Rhodes interview. Okay, we needed a Thunderbolt Patterson interview, one with passion and emotion. Iceman King Parson. We needed somebody with a little if you're there and you're going to do that to a man, you've got to have some passion of some kind, not just
Yeah, he was all fire, when he was knocking Reed around, but then when he got in front of that microphone, it was like somebody bathed him in cold water before he started, and he just
he just didn't have that, that Stan Hansen or Ole Anderson when he gets into it, Tony Atlas. It didn't get anywhere to the level of I'm here to whip somebody's tail, and namely Butch Reed, and it came to nowhere that level. And Watts, I think, kind of commented about that later.
Yeah,
after the interview by saying it was very subdued.
Yeah, very, very low key, very subdued.
Hey, Retro Rob said he only remembered George Wells from the WWF.
Well, like I said, Retro, he turned down a $5,000 payoff.
I can't believe they allowed it to say $5,000 payoff.
I'm sorry, he did, and Bill Watts repeats it later on. He thinks this was a good idea. And then he turned down the card at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, to be at the Irish McNeil Boys Club. Not to say there's anything bad about the Irish McNeil Boys. Please don't send me hate email. No.
Old James Brown, under his kayfabe name, he says two of the worst football players to be wrestlers was Otis Sistruck, and he was pretty bad, and Jim Wilson. We all know Jim Wilson from Atlanta, Georgia fame.
Yeah.
He made the comment about Jim Barnett. So, and he knows that. And
Robert Rice,
distinguishing gentlemen.
Yes.
That'd be Jack and Rodney.
Disgusting gentlemen.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right, we go back to Bill Watts. And now Watts has decided that he's going to list all of the talent that is no longer there. From Paul Orndorff to King Kong Bundy. I mean, I don't know how many. He was naming everybody that used to be the Freebirds. They made their names here. They went somewhere else. I say this. Bitter party of one, your table's ready. Okay? I mean, I hate to be this way, and I have tremendous respect for Bill Watts. But Bill, he's finished. I got a message from Ken. Bill, they're gone. They're gone. They're not coming back. Leave them alone. Get over it. Really. Seriously. Come up the next match. It is Del Vesey and Don Saunders, also known as Sanders, I think.
Yep.
Against sometimes. Against the Fantastic. Jack, give us your impression of this match.
Again, they're still doing the same thing they've done from the get-go, way too fast, not letting anything register out there. And Dale was a heck of a worker. Don was too, but they didn't really give him the time of day out there, which I understand. You're supposed to get over some, but slow down a little bit in the process, let people register what you're doing.
And I noticed Tommy Rogers, tremendous wrestler. Everything he does, solid, looks good. But wow, they have not, as a tag team, now they do get better, but they're still, and who's telling them? You think it's Bill Dundee, Ron West, Bill Watts? Are they telling them to go out there and do all that? Or are they, and I bet they drop kicked 42 times in that match.
Yep. A lot of drop kicks.
With
the Rock and Roll coming back, so many drop kicks in the match.
Double drop kick that's to me a no. You don't use a double drop kick in the match. Or to me it is. Again, I'm with you, Vesey and Saunders. What was missing in the match is that the Fantastic refused to sell, and they needed to because the people were wanting to go Bobby, go Bobby, go, and they just didn't get that. Furthermore, they just come off from being battered with the chairs last week. Okay, now instead of having this big grand interview with Bill Watts, normally talking to the Fantastics and giving them the opportunity to make their case, they came out there, they worked the match as if nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Okay. And to me, Bill Watts was more interested in getting Mid-South Wrestling over than the people who are going to be in the shows coming up, because Mid-South Wrestling wasn't going to wrestle and Bill Watts wasn't going to wrestle in the matches. But the Fantastics were, and we didn't have that powerful interview of we were wronged, blah, 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 and we're getting you, and we don't care where it's at, when it's at. We're looking forward. We're glad it's no disqualification. We're glad. And if we have to drag ourselves, we'll never miss this match. Didn't have that interview. That was missing because Bill Watts was too busy trying to see what suspension or fine they were going to do.
This is how I saw this. Bill Watts cared about George Wells and Butch Reed. He did not want the Fantastics Midnight Express. Here was the Midnight Express, and he just put them off to the buck like they was nothing. And if it wasn't for Bill Dundee wanting to do the angle on television, I don't even know if Bill Watts would have done it. He still had a problem with Bobby and Dennis. He still had a problem with Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, anybody that was a smaller guy. And he was producing, unfortunately, for 6 months. They had great business, had great sellouts. Business was great, and he wanted to change it right back to what he had it. And Butch Reed, and George Wells, and those guys on the main event.
Last week, I think we had a card in which Reed and Wells was the main event, while the Fantastics and the Midnight was
way down on the card. And he wanted to be. Unfortunately, it seemed like to me that Bill Watts was jealous that Bill Dundee was able to come in. He was able to make it draw, and he was going to go back the way it was. And you can see it happening.
Yeah, it is from right here on out. I've fast forwarded in about 6 weeks. We're going fast forward to 1983, and the last Superdome show in 1983 drew 8,000 people, and the very next year with Midnight on the main event did 25,000 people. There's a difference.
Bill Watts was producing wrestling that he wanted to see.
Yep.
The same thing that's being done in wrestling today. He was presenting wrestling that he wanted to see, not what the people wanted to see, but what he wanted to see. And that was and I respect Bill Watts. But just watch the progression of the show. When we started in January, we talked about it. We went all the way up to this point. You can go back and you can watch it and see what they were doing. Terry Taylor, they just pretty well act like he's not even there anymore.
And Magnum TA.
Yep. This makes no sense.
Here's the thing. They took so long, and we've chronicled it about Magnum TA of how long they took to get there. Master G, George Wells, they expected him to do it week number 1. Yeah. They expected Brickhouse Brown, week 4? After a year of building up Magnum TA, and then expect these people to do it in 4 or 5. Oh, wait. Oh, yes, Mongo. Yeah. Let's forget Mongo.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and agree now that that's the worst football player in the history of the industry.
Yeah. That's right. And Measure Ooh La La. We like it. Good evening. Yes.
Monsieur Ooh La La.
Yes. Ooh La La. Sorry.
There you go. Yes. James Brown. It says
Mongo was a horseman for 6 minutes.
Was he really a horseman?
Yes, he was.
Yes, which is 5 minutes and 59 seconds too long.
I didn't even know he was.
Oh gosh, you owe it to you. You got to go see some of that stuff on YouTube. It's horrendous.
Jesse J. Sevilla, what is the latest on Tommy Rogers' partner, Bobby Fulton? I heard he was in the hospital. I know he was diagnosed with cancer. Jack, do you have any information?
He was back in the hospital here recently, suffering from some of the effects of the cancer treatment. But so far, the cancer seems to be gone. But he's still having a lot of health issues related to the treatment of all of that. So, he's not out of the woods yet. So continue to keep him in your prayers.
Rhett Harrison, one good match, not to get away from this clip, of course, was the Midnight Express against Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA, where they tarred and feathered TA in 1984, right before Wrestling 2 turned on TA. Beautiful stuff. Again, taking a tremendous amount of time to get to where you're going. Not trying this, let's throw something against the dartboard and see if we hit a bullseye. It's just
right.
It doesn't work.
Exactly.
How would you guys rate Boyd Pierce as an announcer, Jack?
I love Boyd. he was very sincere. He came across as a fan, and that's I think that's what you need. That was my appeal for Jim Ross. At the same time, when he talks, you think it's a fan talking about what's going on.
Yeah, I love Bill. I love Boyd Pierce. I think he would, and I loved his suits. Man, I tell you, he was such a character and such a nice man. That just the times we got to talk to him, he was such a nice man. He was the Jerry Clower of professional wrestling.
He was awesome, and the people loved Boyd Pierce. Just like in different areas, people loved Gordon Solie, and they loved Charlie Platt, Les Thatcher, Harry Thornton, Lance Russell, Dave Brown. They loved Boyd Pierce. I hate it, though, that they were trying to diminish his spot on there. They just sort of says he introduces welcome people to the show and says, now here's Bill. Or whatever, and it just seems like after, and he makes a comment on one of the shows that he'd been doing the show for 25 years or whatever, and I took it as he's saying, "Hey, look, I've been here long enough. I know what I'm doing. If you'll get out of the way and let me." That's what it sounded like.
Exactly.
Dennis Cook, I want to put Pierce's wardrobe. Yeah,
I still want it.
Mungo, whatever. Mungo was awful. Yeah, we agree with that. Okay. So now we come to the point of why Jim Cornette is now wearing the mask. And now we're going to show footage from the New Orleans Downtown Municipal Auditorium, which looked packed, by the way. New Orleans was the only town that ran weekly back then. It ran every Monday night. And so we got there. It was going to be hair versus hair. No disqualification. As Jim Duggan goes against Hercules Hernandez. It's Jim Duggan's hair against Cornette's hair. And apparently through the night, the referees got wiped out. They're not able to referee through the evening. So Grizzly Smith calls in a special help, has Steve Dr. Death Williams as the special guest referee. I absolutely loved every bit of this. I loved every bit of it. Right up to the very end. I mean, it's just perfect. Absolutely perfect after everything Cornette has done. Now, in the end, Steve Williams, of course, Duggan has Hernandez beat. And then Steve Williams goes down 1, 2, and then drops the elbow on Duggan, turns it over, and then counts him out 1, 2, 3. Now, Duggan, for all practical purposes, should have his head shaved right there in front of him. He lost the match. But instead, everybody hits the ring, and they grab Cornette. And, I mean, he loses his hair whether he wants to or not, and he's screaming, "Bobby, Bobby!" You had Bobby and Dennis and Hernandez out in the aisleway, and I think at certain point the Clippers gave out, and they just took those disposable razors and just rubbed his head.
It was like they were really getting in that. I'm gonna tell you, Jim Cornette and Steve Williams, they have such a great telepathic thing going though. Now, if they just found out the moment before the match that Steve Williams is going to referee this match, they must have, because, they had telepathically stuff going on in a couple episodes way, way before then as well. So they've got this, it's an incredible situation going on with the.
He has him on retainer. Anytime, slip him a few bucks, he's okay.
He slipped him a whole lot of big bucks. It was like a huge amount of money. I wonder if Steve gave that money back to Cornette.
Out the door he goes.
That might be the Austin Idol deal. He might have just took it with him.
Yeah, I think those, like I said, it got to the point where the Clippers just gave out. They gave him sort of a haircut, and then they got the disposables. They put the shaving cream on him, and they were just pulling. I think they were just janking.
I enjoyed that segment, though. I really did.
It was beautiful.
Good.
It was beautiful, and if you'll notice, we're for whatever reason stopped showing stuff from arenas, and this is refreshing to see something from the arenas in this. Then we have match number 4. We've got Hercules Hernandez and Steve Williams against Johnny Mantell and Steve Miller. Mantell.
Oh, he's so good.
Woo, what can you say? I mean, just fantastic. Now, last week we had a handicap match with Hercules Hernandez. Remember those 3 guys against Hernandez? I think all he needed was the one guy, Johnny Mantell.
Yeah.
I think he needed just the one guy, Johnny Mantell, and I believe the partner was the guy that was in the sixth man list.
This is what I noticed about Johnny Mantell, and I don't know if y'all noticed this, but he can make anyone look good.
Mm-hmm.
He is that great. If they mess up, he knows how to. He knew how to pick up and make it look good.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Him and Hercules had one spot they messed up, but if you didn't know that, you didn't know that, because it's not like he lost. Either one of them got lost. They just, held on and, worked it anyway.
Oh yeah,
that's good workers right there.
Oh yeah, Johnny Mantell. They missed the boat of not pushing him.
Huge miss.
Yeah, it was. He is just tremendous. What is that? Cornette said they cut the heck out of him with those disposable razors, and yeah, we could tell it. I mean,
I'm pretty sure one time he looked up at Duggan and said, "He's up."
And then if Sonny King's just laughing at him. Sonny King's just laughing. No wonder he's hollering, "Bye-bye!"
Good stuff, though.
Anyway, so back to the match. Johnny Mantell, Hercules Hernandez, Steve Williams. In the end, it's Johnny Mantell makes the terrible mistake of tagging out to Mr. Miller. Steve Miller. It goes downhill from there. It ends up 3-point stance with Steve Williams overrunning the guy and then giving him the Oklahoma Stampede. And
when he gave him that 3-point stance, man, I mean, he really rolled through that guy. Did y'all see that? That could have been the end of that poor boy. He wouldn't even have to pick him up for the thing.
He wasn't quite ready for it, but he took it.
he was going one way or another. Now, I don't know, Britt, did you check out the commentary during this match? Did you happen to? You did not. Jack, did you catch the commentary in this match?
Yeah.
Did you hear that if Johnny Mantell only had a better partner, maybe like a Terry Taylor or a Brickhouse Brown or one of them, he might be in better shape?
I wonder who booked that show. But.
I don't know if you caught that or not, but I'm thinking, you know what? You might have thought about that before you stuck Steve Miller out there.
All right, I want to say during this show. Okay, well, just go ahead and get the other show, and because I think there's one more match.
We're coming up to the end, and we'll hear Bill Watts announce exactly why that powerful interview with the Fantastic wasn't on. Because here in a few weeks, the return of the Rock and Roll Express. People have been asking about it. They've been getting cards and letters. They've been calling us. They've been finding out where the Rock and Roll Express is, and he talks about the match that they had in Hammond, Louisiana, which there's no footage of. And then they go back and they re-show the Rock and Roll Express, and basically the whole thing. That's they show the video, and it's the Rock and Roll Express with Joan Jett and the Black Hearts. I love rock and roll, and they're on their way back, and that's the way the show ends with the rolling the credits. So that was the end of that.
Okay, this is what I've seen on this show. Bill Dundee talent, superstar Bill Dundee, for 6 months drew a ton of money for the majority of the money that was drew the first 6 months of 1984. The only people that would have been Bill Dundee's people, Bill Dundee was the Fantastics and the Midnight Express. No one else on that card had anything to do with Bill Dundee. He didn't bring Johnny Mantell in. He didn't bring Butch Reed in. He didn't bring Master G in. He had nothing to do with any of that talent. So he only had 4 of his guys. The rest of them, Bill Watts wanted to show that he was the booking master and that Bill Dundee wasn't as good as he thought he was. And I've seen that in this match. And by the way, Rock and Roll comes back, and they are not over the way they were before they left. The way they left was just totally stupid. It was a horrible thing to do. And I understand why they did it. Jerry Jarrett was crying and belly aching, saying that he took all his talent, which was not true. That was not true whatsoever. He shouldn't have sent him back there. He should have said, well, I'm sorry, Jarrett, that's your problem. And he should have kept the Rock and Roll there because they never got over like they did prior to it. Because they just left. So the fans felt like they just left them. They didn't know why they left. They never told a story or nothing.
We just hear a few weeks later from Joel Watts. Oh, by the way, the Rock and Roll Express lost a loser leave Mid-South match in Hammond, Louisiana. That's one of the most well-kept secrets ever. And I mean, even if your promoter doesn't know, why did James Brown ask, why did Watts fire Ken Patera? No shows? I think it's because he showed up.
Ken Patera was he was Ken Patera. You know, he came to Georgia, and Ken Patera didn't draw any money in Georgia. Not that Ken Patera couldn't draw you money, he just didn't draw in Georgia.
Yeah.
Just some places people don't get over. So, but really and truly, the Rock and Roll just did not. It just never picked up the way it was.
And never ever. And it was sad because you had momentum, and then the thing about it is the whole time they were gone, we should at least saw the match. We should at least saw the match of what happened.
But they wasn't there long enough to do the. It made them look bad because they'd only been there for a couple of months. They was only there for about 3 months, and so then they leave. They draw all this big money, and then they get rid of them, and the people don't have no clue why they were. I mean, it was bad. It was just a bad situation for even when now they came back. They drew some sort of money, but they didn't draw what they did the first 3 months they were there. And it just, they just moved it through. Plus, they moved the Rock and Roll Midnight too quickly. Right. I don't think they had worked each other a month.
No, it was. And think about it is this was Bill Dundee's. This was his guys. This is who he wanted there. And then to do all that big buildup and then have the rug just yanked right out from under you. Just terrible.
Now, Rhett said, I would say they left for the green stuff. No, they left because if people know what happened in 1983, the beginning of 1980 or the end of 1983, Bill Watts went to Jarrett and said, my business is kind of failing. It's not doing well. What am I doing wrong? Jarrett and Jerry Lawler went to there, watched what he said, and said, listen, you don't have enough women in your crowd. He said, so you're not drawing women anymore. And he said, and you've all you got is mostly guys in the crowd. And he said, you need to do more with some younger guys, some smaller guys, some good-looking guys to bring in the women. And then when you bring in the women, you're going to bring in the guys because they're going to come to the matches as well. And so we can see exactly what happened there. And so Jerry Jarrett said, oh, you took my talent.
Right.
And
I don't know. You would have thought they was going to bring them in to put them on top. No. They went right back to the same position that they were in before, because right before they went back there, the fabulous ones were gone. Stan Lane and Steve Keirn were gone. Well, right as the Rock and Roll comes back, here comes Stan Lane, and they're back on top again. Rock and Roll is about mid-card, and after they've been headlining main events all throughout in the big towns, all throughout the Mid-South, and now they come back to Memphis and they're, preliminary guys again.
They're making $10,000 a week probably in Mid-South. Maybe 15 during that whole time, and then they go back and probably make it $1,000 a week.
I heard one time they got an $18,000 check. So
so they made some money.
You go back and you're back to making mid card payoff for Jarrett. Bubba Griffin's Pensacola is in the house, and that ends for tonight's 262. We will do 263. Any predictions on that one?
Has anybody pre-watched this?
Yes.
I started to, but I hadn't yet.
I haven't watched it yet.
Kind of repeat the last one.
Is there anything Jack? Is there anything about this show that we're missing that we need to speak about?
No, this is just one of those episodes where you have to be a dedicated Mid-South fan to get through. I mean, it had some good points. It did. But overall, it's about a C.
Yeah, it was. I can remember, Brent, you're over here. I remember us complaining about this back then. How often?
All right, before we leave,
wait a second. You said 263 next week. That's retro. No, you said 263. Yeah, it will be 263. We're going to do next week.
263. Okay, I'm sorry.
Glad that Rob's keeping up with this.
All right,
after this fell asleep.
Before we leave, we want to hit the merchandising. If you want to get merchandise, you can go to facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Inside and Out, T-shirts and other stuff. And if you want to get one of these shirts that I have on, the Pro Wrestling Inside Now, you can go and get one there.
James Brown, the James Brown. Step back and kiss myself and all that. James Brown. He said, I can see why Watts and Vince McMahon wanted big man. Look at the AEW roster. You see why. Today's wrestlers don't look the part. He was talking about the smaller guys, I guess, on AEW. I think that's what he meant by that. But yeah, he could see why they want the bigger guys. And I can understand that as well. But if you're in Mid-South, and that was primarily what he had beforehand. And before long, that's what he's going to have again. It's primarily all the big men again. When you look at the matches between what we've said, the Midnight Express and Fantastic, the Midnight Express and Rock and Roll, I'm sorry, but Junkyard Dog and Reed just don't follow. They just can't. It's just not possible. And we're not talking about and Dennis Condrey is not a small guy. Neither was Bobby Eaton. They were not super small people, not compared to some of the others. Sure, Jack, want to comment on that?
No, I totally agree. You know, I've said this many times. There used to be a standard in our industry where guys had to have a look that they could go into a bar and win a fight, you know, or at least hold their own. And you know, we've completely gotten away from that for the most part. I mean, there's some big guys, you know, still in the industry now, but there's, you know, predominantly it's smaller guys. And I think that hurts us. And that's nothing against the small guys because there's still places for them.
Yeah.
But when you have more than you have those real looking guys, I think you lose something.
Yeah, certainly. James Brown's talking about Marco and Orange.
Well, yeah, I believe, you know, I believe they do have a smaller guys. What we're talking about in this instance is people, if you are putting a Butch Reed in a George Wells match and they're going to wrestle in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and 3 weeks before then, the Rock and Roll went against the Midnight Express, I can guarantee you, even if it drew that time with Butch Reed, people are going to go, wait, that match is not as good as what I just seen in Rock and Roll the Midnight. I'm not going to go pay $15, $20. I think it was $15, $16 for tickets, even back then in 1984. They're not going to pay a ticket to see that. And that was the problem. Not that the guys were bigger, they were smaller or whatever. They just wasn't as talented as the Rock and Roll Express. And Butch Reed was great. But Butch Reed, even though he was great, he was no Dennis Condrey or Bobby Eaton. He just wasn't.
And the thing about it, that is what we'll talk about later. I mean, that's what we're going to talk about later is the fact that when you have people like Bobby and Dennis, nobody can follow them because they're that good. It's not that it's not that they're bad. It's just you're just not as good as they are.
Is this the little guy, Marco Stunt? Is that the little
Marco Stunt? Yeah.
That's a little bitty old guy. Well, it's just that, you know, they don't take wrestling serious, okay? And that's the problem. It's they're just not taking it serious. Now everything has its time. Because hey, Monday night on the Wrestling Conversation, we will be going over something that was probably for the time, it was probably a little out there. The Continental Cat funeral. But it was all made to get heat on Dirty White Boy and Tom Pritchard. That was all it was for, to get some heat on them and to try to get a new character called the Continental Cat into the deal. So
as a former portrayer of the Continental Cat, I cried during this funeral.
And it did work, and we'll talk about that Monday night on the Wrestling Conversation. But you'll have to go over to Facebook. You're watching this right now on YouTube. Well, no, we do that. We do that right here on YouTube as well, don't we? Okay, never mind. I've been sleeping since then, so I don't know.
Just join us. We're somewhere.
We're somewhere on this thing. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up. Oh, and which he did not.
Let's just say it gets better, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry about it. We're on a rag tonight. We got to call it like we see it. Can't be all great, and we saw it was not all that great, but it does improve. And later on down the line, we're going to see, as we get into 85, probably one of the biggest stars they ever had. I'm talking about Jake the Snake Roberts. We'll talk about him in the future. And it's not over. It's not over by a long shot. And that was pretty impressive with Jake Roberts. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more as we continue on our in-depth review of Mid-South Wrestling in 1984 and into 1985. For Jack Lord, Brent West, I'm Rodney West. We'll see you on the next Pro Wrestling Inside and Out.
Make sure you subscribe and give us a thumbs up. See you in the next episode.